Hi, this is a quick demo of how we can use Python 3 and Web3Py to interact with a local Ethereum through Ganache. So in a nutshell, Ganache is a local Ethereum network. And part of the nice thing about Ganache is that they'll create accounts, and then each one of these accounts will have an address and built-in Ether, so all of them will be 100, and it would be OX something something OX something. So Web3Py is a library that will allow for your Python 3 code to interact with these accounts. So generally, to transfer ETH from one account to the other, we need to, number one, create a transaction, two, sign the transaction, and three, send the transaction. All right, so this demo, well, let's see how this works.
Okay, let's go ahead and get started with the demo connecting Python 3 to Ganache. So the first thing I'll do is I'll invoke the Ganache app on my MacBook Pro, and I will connect to our local Ganache existing network. And over here you can see that Ganache pre-created 10 accounts, each with its own address and 100 ETH. All right, so let's go ahead and look at the Python script. And over here on the right, I'll bring up Python interactively. So first thing we want to do is for Python3 to be able to access Ganache, we have to import the Web3 library. And the second thing is I want to set the URL to whatever Ganache has this running on. The RPC server is that copied over. And once we have that, then now we finally get to invoke the Web3 library to pass in with the URL, get a handle in Python through this W3 variable. And the first thing we can actively do with it is check the connection, and we can invoke a built-in method called isConnected, and the connection is true. So Python 3 right now is connected to Ganache. The next thing I want to do is create a few variables that represent the accounts that were pre-created in Ganache. And so you can see the address. And so we can copy that address, OX96A, OX96A. Now for each account, there's a corresponding private key. And if we hit this little key symbol, you can see it says 78F8. And that's what I done here. I created a variable that reflects that. Okay, and then I'm going to do this for next two accounts. Okay, voila. So we've got these variables set that represent the address and the private keys. Okay, next let's invoke a Web3 function to just check out the balances within these accounts. We're going to look at account number 1 and 2, and they should all have 100 ETH. Okay, and there they are. Okay, next we want to build a transaction using a dictionary, Python dictionary, and so dictionaries are defined with curly braces, and these are key values pairs, and let's go ahead and do that. Okay, and then let's take a look at the transaction. Okay, so this dictionary has these key value pairs. All right, and next, let's go ahead and invoke sign the transaction. And so when we sign the transaction, we're using the key of account number 1. So, and then that will return a signed transaction receipt. And then let's take a look at that. And then we can get a hash of it through this command. And then you can see it's called hex bytes. Okay, great. So now that we've signed the transaction, next we want to be able to send it. And when we do the send, we call the send raw transaction. And we pass to it the signed transaction, which is as a reminder, signed by account one. And after all this, it will return a transaction hash as a receipt, and we then can use that later on to compare um, against what was passed back earlier from before we send the transaction, and you can see the two transaction hashes match. Okay, and then over here, you can see then two ETH has been transferred, one from account one to account number two, and we can also verify this through Python command here. And then if we look over here into the transactions, we can see that two transactions had occurred, uh, and we can look at the firm address and to the to address, and you can see that the value of 2 ETH was transferred. All right, this is a quick demo of using Python 3, using Web3Py libraries, and interactively using the Python 3 shell to interact with Ganache.